Hi, my name is Daniil Dubov, and in this video I will share my thoughts on Ian Nepomniachtchi's recent performances and his chances in the World Championship match. Ian hasn't played too much recently, he has only played in Düsseldorf, in fact, and we'll look at the games from this tournament. So let's jump right into it. The first game we'll look at is his game with white against Giri. Ian started with c4, you can see it as a screen. Knight f6, knight c3, e5, knight f3, knight c6, a3. There is always a guessing game before the World Championship match, as players normally try to hide their main repertoire, and they also try to bluff the opponent, make him think that some rare lines could be actually used in the match. Here, I'm pretty sure this is a bluff. Ian tried this a3 line twice in this game, and he also played it in the tiebreaks against Aronian, but still I'm pretty sure this is not going to happen in the match. Ian was just trying to get the game going and get some fight. Uninstructed with d5, takes, queen c2, knight takes c3, b takes c3, and queen d6. Queen d6 is probably not exactly accurate. Levon in the tiebreaks played bishop d6 here and got a very nice position. Anish went for queen d6, and Ian played g3. g3 is a thematic move. White is trying to get his bishop to g2, and then we get some weird sort of English opening. Some plans with e4 were also reasonable, trying to develop the bishop to c4 or even b5 in some of the lines. What's funny is that the engine also likes h4 here, followed by f5, e4. g3 though is clearly the most human move, and there is nothing wrong with it. So g3, queen g6, d3, bishop e7, bishop g2, castles, rook b8. So now black is trying to get b6, bishop b7, and then eventually if black will trade the bishops on the big diagonal, he'll be fine. a4, b6, just as we explained. Knight d2. Knight d2 is probably the first step in the wrong direction, but I can see Ian's point. The problem is that the most natural move here is a5, and clearly this kind of trade favors white, as he gets the central pawn and a very good knight on e5. But the problem is that after bishop f5, black is threatening to play e5, e4. White is not exactly happy to play e4 himself, as then the bishop on g2 loses most of his power. So some normal line here would be, let's say, takes, bishop e3, e4, takes, knight h4, takes on g6, and then white captures the knight on c6, and the game will most probably finish in a draw. It's probably a little bit more smart to go bishop e3 first, without the inclusion of ab6, but still this position is very dry. Ian played knight d2 instead, which is a clear indication of his fighting spirit. He wants to play the game. He's preventing this whole e5, e4 concept. Knight a5. Now black is just trying to get bishop b7 and trade the bishops. Bishop b2, bishop b7, takes. Ian played c4, opening the diagonal for the bishop. Knight c6, knight f3, bishop d6, and a5. a5 is, I think, in general correct. As a structure, long-term favors black. Like if white will skip a lot of moves, black will eventually get f5, followed by e4 or f4. And if white is not in time to get this a5, then there is no real counterplay, so a5 is probably correct. B takes a5 and c5. Anish played bishop takes. And this is the first real critical moment of the game. Ian played bishop takes e5, which is again ambitious and objectively not the best choice. Still, I can get his point, right? He's trying to get into shape for the match. And queen takes c5, rook takes b2, takes, queen f5, takes is not exactly, advertising, as the game will most probably finish in a draw after, let's say, e3, queen b5 and some pawns will be traded. And the rook ending will be drawish, so bishop takes c5 is an attempt to play for a win, which is always nice for the spectators, but black is objectively better now. Bishop b6, rook f2 c1, knight b4, queen c4 is reasonable, c4 is a very good square for the queen, c5, bishop f4, now the bishop is heading back to e3, where he can attack the pawn on c5, rook e8, bishop e3, rook e7. Both players, played some logical moves. Black doubled on the e file just to have rook takes c2 in all the lines, like this one, for instance, and then knight takes d3 is coming. Ian played knight d2, trying to get knight e4 in, queen h5, attacking e2, rook e1, knight d5. Now suddenly this bishop is in danger, so knight f1 is more or less forced, h6, rook a2 c1. Yeah, and here black is much better, and this is where things start and going wrong way for Anish, which I think was mostly because of his wrong estimation of the position. He probably thought that white is more or less okay. In fact, it was still reasonable to go knight b4 back. And then whatever white will play, like long term, black will play rook e5, followed by queen h3, and then rook h5. And then white is more or less tied down, and black will try to improve his position even more eventually. Anish played knight f6 instead. Queen a4, knight g4, rook c4 is a very nice regroupment of the pieces. Ian finally managed to activate his rook. Now the c5 pawn is also kind of weak, as rook takes c2 is not possible exactly everywhere. Anish played f5, and queen a2 is a very important nice move from Ian, as first of all there is a threat of the discover check, and secondly the queen is protecting the e2 pawn from a2. Anish played queen f7, rook a4. And here, yeah, this was the last moment where black could keep queens by playing rook e6, and black was still better, in fact. Like, there is not much that white can do about some h5, h4 coming, and this is more or less an easy game for black with a lot of pressure. Anish, though, I think wasn't really sure that he is better all the way, and he preferred queen takes a2, rook takes a2, c4, simplifying everything, and they agreed a draw after massive trades, and the game finished in draw after rook takes a5. The quality of play, I would say, was actually reasonable. Yes, Ian was much worse during the game, but I'm pretty sure this, for instance, here he clearly saw this a5, and he just wanted to play. It's not that he misevaluated the position. He just wanted to play, and he was fine with being slightly worse. And then he kept being resourceful, and I want to point out once again this really nice idea of first queen a4 followed by rook c4, and then this queen a2 move. Like, a2 is absolutely brilliant square for the queen. It helps to protect e2 and to create threats. So as the game finished in a draw rather reasonably. Let's continue. Yeah, and let's continue with his game against Aronian, which gives us more. This is, I think, Ian's best game from the tournament. This was like not exactly must-win situation for him, but Aronian was leading, and he played a very solid opening. And like normally, this kind of games normally finish in a draw, but Ian managed to create some pressure despite playing a very, very solid opening. Queen's Gambit declined, which he, it seems, likes to play, and especially recently he has been trying it a lot with some success. And this, I would say, could be not a bluff, but his real repertoire for the World Championship match. Clearly, is ending after c5, c takes d5, c takes d4, takes, e4, d takes e4, takes is still there. And it's always a headache, especially for the World Championship match, as like white is really lacking ideas here. But there is nothing wrong with bishop e7 too, which has been played by Magnus, for instance, many times, and many world champions tried it as well. So we saw it, and comparing to the standing, it's also nice that sometimes black gets active counterplay and can even win, unlike in the ending. This is actually exactly what happened in the game. Bishop f4, castle c3 is one of the most solid lines. c5, dc5, bishop c5, c takes d5, knight takes d5, takes, bishop d3, bishop b4, check, knight d2. This is a very topical position that is considered to be like slightly better for white, but in general it's very dry, and the games, at least at the top level, normally finish in a draw here, which makes it even more impressive that Jan managed to win it as black. Knight c6, castles, bishop e7, queen b3. This is not exactly the most ambitious setup. I'm pretty sure like Levin's point was to just make a draw. He was leading in the tournament, he wanted to be solid, he didn't want to really fight for advantages. Like in terms of ideas, normally as long as white doesn't stop d5, d4, he has more or less nothing. Bishop f6 happened in the game. f6 is clearly a very good square for the bishops. That's why black plays bishop e7 here. a3, queen e7, rook a to c1, bishop e6. Now we can see that white pieces are a little bit misplaced. Like normally white could have gotten the same position with knight on f3 and queen, let's say, on e2, which would be a little more harmonious, but once again it seems that Levin didn't really care, and he thought he will be fine anyway. Queen b5 is reasonable, preventing d5, d4 with the tempo. Rook a to c8, rook c2. So white is finally trying to come up with a plan. He's planning doubling on the c file, followed by knight b3, knight c5, creating some pressure long term, but the problem with this plan is that black has a lot of time, and he'll clearly use the time he's given. a6, queen b6, queen d7, preparing bishop d8, knight b3, bishop d8, queen c5, bishop e7, queen b6, and this is actually the point that I want to specify, and I want to praise Jan, as in general when you play Queen's Gambit declined, it's not exactly your main idea to win the game, and here he could, just accept the threefold repetition after bishop d8, queen c5, bishop e7, and so on, and the result, okay, you play black against Aronian, it's always decent. But still, Jan managed to push himself and play for the win, which is, I think, a very good sign for the World Championship match. As normally in the match, you're not given too many chances, and you need to be ready to play like any kind of position for the win when the opportunity presents itself. So bishop d8, queen c5, bishop e7, queen b6, and g5. g5 is not exactly all in yet. Bishop g3 is forced, and then Jan first decided to remind Aronian that the repetition is still there. Bishop d8, queen c5, bishop e7, queen b6 was played, and Jan played f5, which is again a clear indication of playing for a win. And once again, I'll praise him here. Very impressive fighting spirit. And Aronian played f3. f3 is a bit nervous, so queen c5 it seems the move. But then white is not safe anymore. Let's say e takes, rook takes, f4, e takes f4 is forced, g takes, bishop h4 is forced, knight e5, rook takes c8, takes, bishop b1, d4, leads to a very sharp position, which is actually quite dangerous for both sides. Like my original feeling would be that it's black who is in danger, as his king is really weak. On the other hand, the d pawn is marching, and there is also some rook c6 followed by bishop d5 followed by queen g4 in many lines. So the position remains balanced and very sharp, which is not exactly what Aronian wanted from this game, it seems. So he went f3, which was probably partly reasoned by his wish to finally finish the game after the same repetition of the moves. And Jan played bishop d8 indeed, queen c5, bishop e7, queen b6, and after queen c5, finally they repeated a few times, and he played f4. Queen f7 was probably even better here. Black is actually even objectively better. First of all, clearly the momentum was on Jan's side, as you know, suddenly you play very solid opening that is supposed to, you know, supposed to lead to some very solid positions that are probably sometimes slightly worse, but in general you're holding rather comfortably, and instead you get a very nice position where you can force a draw any minute and you can play for a win more or less risk-free. Jan played f4, e takes e4, g takes f4, so finally there is no repetition anymore. Bishop f2, bishop e7, repeated once, and bishop f6. So now it's kind of clear that it's black who is in the driver's seat. Like, objectively, white is still okay, but you know, in a practical game, it's kind of clear that it's black who is pressing. Some queen g7 is coming, followed by bishop h3 in some of the lines, or even king h8, followed by rook j8. White has to be really precise. Levin started with a good move, rook f2 c1, queen g7. Now he played queen d6, which is also good, as some knight e5 is coming, so it makes sense to remove the queen from the c file, also attacking e6. Rook c2, it happened. And here, this was objectively the first real mistake by Lev. He played rook e1, which kind of makes sense, you know. This is an open file, we are also attacking the bishop on e6. But yeah, it's not that simple anymore. So king h1 was a move, it seems. And then white just has to give up the pawn on b2 and go rook g1, which is not exactly what you want to do. I mean, especially after being this solid, but it seems that it's much more important for white to get the safe kings and to protect the pawn, and then it's probably black king who'll be in danger. The position remains balanced, and still it's clearly a success for black in terms of getting the game going. Rook e1, though, after knight e5, led to, you know, some immediate problems. And Lev collapsed here playing knight d4, which is just a blunder, but the only move here to you know, keep on holding was king f1, which is clearly not what you want to play. The reasons are rather simple though, like, it's not only knight takes d3 that is the problem, but also knight takes f3. So king f1 is a good move, like we prefer king f1 to king h1 as there are no background issues. And after king f1, white is still worse, but he's holding on, and with precise play, he'll probably manage to save the game. Lev played knight d4 instead, and after bishop h3, he found out that he's actually losing a piece, as bishop f1 is more or less forced. White has to prevent queen takes g2 checkmate, and knight f7. And the problem is that rook takes e8 is not a check, and black will capture the queen, not the rook. And black is winning immediately. So queen takes d5 happened in the game, and then after rook takes e1, bishop takes e1, bishop takes d4 check, black just has an extra piece, and Jan managed to convert it rather comfortably after king h1. He just played bishop c8, very calm move that I like, just protecting b7. The game is more or less over, there is no rush anymore. And yeah, bishop c4, rook e8, bishop b4, queen f6, just activating the pieces slowly, bishop d3. Bishop c3 was a funny joke from Jan. It's not exactly necessary, but it's still nice. Bishop takes c3, queen takes c3. Clearly you can never take the queen because of the, you know, back rank checkmate. So g4 happened in the game. Jan went back to f6, rook c7, rook e1 check, bishop e6, black got all the pieces out. It's clear that black is winning. Queen h5, queen takes b2, h6, queen g6, queen g7. Once again, a very good calculation there by Jan. Queen takes b2 is somewhat counterintuitive to me. Like, normally when you're a piece up, you want to keep your queen close to the king, and maybe you just go h6, you know, to make sure you're safe and you'll convert it slowly. But queen takes b2 is actually a very good move, as after king h3, h6, queen g6, queen g7, white doesn't really have a next move, so king h4 is a desperado, and after rook h1, Lev resigned. Very nice game for Jan, I guess, especially given the tournament situation. He basically had to win. Aronian was leading, And this was, a very, very flexible strategy which could be useful in the match. Like, you play very, very solid opening, you're fine with a draw, and then once given a chance, you just start pushing for the win. Very nice game. And this basically brought Ian to a tie for the first place, where they played a tiebreak and Aronian eventually won it. Still, Ian's performance was really good. He finished the tournament undefeated, and in general he had some suspicious positions, but unlike Ding, I would say he remained solid all the way. Let's also have a look at his game against Praggnanandhaa, which is also kind of interesting in terms of his match preparation. Ian was white, and he started with 1 e4, no c4, h3 jokes this time, e4, e5, the gioco piano Italian. This is all theory, no big news. h3, knight e7, d4, knight c6 is one of the very, very topical ideas in the line. D takes e5, knight takes e5, takes, a5. e5 is probably a good move. Like, in general, as the position is symmetrical, sometimes white, gets something. It's clearly going to be very solid for black anyway, but in general, as only plan available for white here is, playing a5, b4, and eventually knight b3 followed by bishop e3. And then if you trade the bishops, you get the knight to c5, you can play somehow. So a5 is the first step of this plan. Bishop e6, bishop f1. Black is clearly not worried about doubling the pawns, as this would activate his rook. And the f2 pawn is really weak, some knight h5 is in there, and the black clearly has a lot of play. So bishop f1, queen e7, queen e2. Queen e2 is a little bit, it does look artificial, but the problem is that rook d8 is coming anyway. White will have to remove his queen from d1. And queen c2, it does look probably a little bit more natural, but the problem is that there is knight h5. Which is not the case after queen e2. And then some queen f6 followed by knight f4 is coming, and white king starts to feel really uncomfortable. So queen e2, rook f2 d8, b4. Once again, it's clearly not a world championship prep. Ian was just more or less freestyling, is my impression, as here black is just fine in many ways. Moreover, black is the one having some small pressure. Pragg played bishop d7 here, which is fine. The point is that if you start with c5, then white's idea is to go b5. Then after takes, if white will be in time to put some piece on c4, then the bishop on a7 will be really bad. So in general, black would prefer to play c5 as a way that prevents b4, b5. So this is why bishop d7 was played. Rook a to c8 was probably a little more precise, as white doesn't have active moves anyway, but bishop d7 is reasonable. Knight f3 was played. Knight f3 is once again, it's typical Ian, he's not really worried being slightly worse, he likes to play for the win anyway. So knight b3 was as the most accurate move, but this is not how you try to win this. After bishop e6, queen c2, white is trying desperately to prevent c5, so now if you go c5, white will just take, and clearly trading this very good bishop would be an achievement for him. So knight d7 is a move, preparing c5, and now knight d2 is a very, very smart idea shown by an engine, and the idea remains. The point is that after c5, b5, there is no c5, c4. Let's say here, if we play some random move like bishop e3, then after takes or c5 first, it doesn't matter, b5 runs into c4, and then b5 is hanging. So the point of knight d2 is to prevent this c5, c4, which happens anyway. After a takes b5, bishop takes b5, c4. White captures with the knight, as bishop takes c4 runs into queen c5, attacking both c4 and f2. Black is winning. So knight takes c4 is a move. And then after queen c5, bishop takes d7. Both sides are okay. Let's say bishop takes c4, bishop g4, queen c6. Black clearly has a very, very decent compensation. He will easily get his pawn back, but the game will most probably finish in a draw after, let's say, bishop e2 takes, queen takes c3, bishop e3, and so on. most of the pieces will be traded, and then some 4 against 4 rook ending is coming. Knight f3 happened in the game though. c5, queen b2, bishop c6. It's kind of clear, I would say, that black is the one pressing here. He has all the good pieces. The bishop on a7 is currently blocked by the c5 pawn, but c takes b4 could happen any moment. Queen b1, c takes b4, c takes b4. Bishop d4 happened here, which is probably a bit of premature, like there was nothing wrong with playing rook a2 c8 first. Bishop d4, rook a2, rook a2 c8, bishop d2. Now it becomes sort of obvious that white is preparing knight takes d4 one day, and playing bishop a7 would be a real concession. So Pragg played queen e6. Queen d7 was probably the only way to, keep some pressure, at least trying to get queen takes d4, not rook takes d4 after capturing. Queen e6 is reasonable, but knight takes d4, rook takes d4, f3 led to a very, safe position for both sides. Bishop d5 is a good move. Black is trying to trade his bad bishop after f3. The bishop on c6 didn't really have a lot of work. Rook c2, trades, rook c2 d8, bishop c3, rook c4, bishop a1. And this is again where Ian has shown some, real fighting spirit. As the position is symmetrical and objectively black is completely fine. It's not even obvious why it's white exactly who is trying. But Ian managed to put some pressure still. Rook takes c2, queen takes c2, knight a8. Knight a8 is a very solid move. Black is preparing knight d6 followed by f6. Knight h5 though was a little bit more ambitious, and here it would be white who would be in a bit of danger, although as the position remains solid. Knight a8, b5, typical Ian. Clearly, knight d6 would stop this idea forever, so it's now or never, and he prefers now b5 takes queen c5, attacking both b5 and d5 pawns. f6, queen takes b5, knight d6. The position remains very, very solid for black. Clearly, like the pawns on a5 and b7 will most probably be traded, which would basically mean that the game will finish in a draw. Still, Ian is trying to prevent this trade, putting some pressure, queen b4, rook c8, rook d1, rook c6, king h2. And now we can see that actually it's white who is clearly in the driver's seat. The b7 pawn is clearly weaker than the a5 pawn. Bishop b2, bishop a3 is coming. Once you touch the knight, b7 will be hanging. And here, queen c4 was a good move, more or less forcing the trades, and black would be fine. But after king h7, as happened in the game, white played rook d5, and it's not that simple for black anymore. So once again, Ian managed to trick his opponent more or less from nothing. Queen d7, bishop c3, queen c7, bishop a1, very logical regroupment. The bishop on a1 didn't really have any good opportunities. Knight c8. Now queen d2 was a very good move that normally still black is okay, but after queen d2 the pressure is there for real. Let's say rook d6 and some bishop f2. White is clearly better as black is not in time to trade the b7 pawn for the pawn on a5. Ian played queen f8 in the game, rook d6, rook b5, knight e7. And once again, it feels like black is a little tied up. But the good news for him is that white queen is a little bit too far from the king, which Pragg managed to use in a very nice way. After bishop b4, queen c1 was a great spot, and after bishop takes d6, queen f4 check, king h1, queen c1, the game finished in perpetual. Still, I would think Ian did well. In this game, once again, we started with this position after knight f3, where black is clearly slightly better in a symmetrical position and enjoying all the advantages you can imagine. And Ian was really better in like 7 moves. So once again, he managed to outplay his opponent, which is a very good sign. As once again, in the match, normally both players are solid, and there will be a lot of play in this quite symmetrical position, most probably. And in general, the way Ian played is, I think, very nice. And there is some reasonable optimism for him and his fans regarding the match, so we will see. But in general, I like Jan's performance a lot, and I think he has a very good chances in the match.